Welcome. My name is Qassem Al Hayek. Joining me today for a conversation on the topic of innovation, technology, and development is Professor Sunil Mani. Professor Sunil Mani is a Reserve Bank of India chair. He is the director and a professor at the Center for Development Studies in Trivandrum in the Indian state of Kerala. His area of specialization is economics of technology and innovation. He has conducted extensive research both in India and in different institutions around the world. Professor Sunil Mani, thank you for joining me today.
Okay, thank you, Qasim. Thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to answering the various questions that you have.
Recently, you were a member of the drafting committee for India's new Science, Technology, and Innovation Policy 2020. So to start our conversation today, what do we mean generally by innovation policies, and what are current trends we are seeing in innovation policy in India?
Okay. Well, innovation policy is defined as a set of instruments and institutions which can support domestic technology development in any country. Okay. And these policy instruments and institutions can be broadly divided into two categories. The first category is a set of financial instruments and institutions which would finance the generation of new technologies by firms and research institutes and universities. Okay. And the second one is a set of non-financial instruments and institutions which would again do exactly the same thing. Okay. And in developing countries, these instruments can also support adaptation of imported technology to local conditions. Because as you know, all technologies are location specific. So when something is imported from abroad, that will have to be adapted to the local conditions. So there are various kinds of schemes which are available for encouraging that process and to develop local capabilities. So those also can be put under those instruments. Okay. Now, in terms of financial instruments, the two broad things that you have, the basic assumption is that innovation is done by existing enterprises and institutions which are already there. Okay, and you are at, and it is generally shown that if you are talking about enterprises, they do face a kind of a market failure because knowledge. Innovation is nothing but generation of new knowledge, and knowledge has public good characteristics. So I will have a disincentive to generate this new knowledge. So this will have to be overcome by the state or the government stepping in the form of giving some sort of subsidies whereby the new knowledge creation can be cheapened. The cost of creating the new knowledge can be cheapened. So governments do this in two ways. One is that they can give you a tax incentive. So that is an indirect way of promoting a new knowledge creation. So that is a innovation policy instrument. So if you do X dollars worth of R&D during year T, governments will say that a certain percentage of that X dollars can be deducted from your taxable income for that year T. Okay. So that is one way of that. One way in which governments can overcome this problem of market failure in new knowledge creation. The second way is by government giving you a grant, a research grant, okay, to work on, let's say, developing vaccines for COVID-19. Okay, so irrespective of whether that particular project is successful or not, you don't have to repay because it's a grant. So you don't have to repay that amount, and so you can take that money and work on a risky project, and at the end of the day, if you are not able to come out with a new product or a process, which is what we call innovation, but nothing happens. You don't have to pay it back. So you have tax incentives, you have research grants. These are given to existing firms. Non-financial instruments can be a wide variety. For instance, the intellectual property right regime, the policy on patents, because that is another way in which you can incentivize innovation and prevent market failure. But the most important non-financial instrument to me is the supply of good quality scientists and engineers. because unless you have that in a critical, unless you have a critical mass of that in your country, you really cannot, by simply giving you a very attractive tax incentive or a research grant, will not result in any kind of innovation.
Thank you very much for that answer. And you touch on the role of government in innovation policy and in promoting innovation. And more recently, in the commentary on India's economy and society series, you conducted a comparative analysis on vaccine research and development and its manufacturing, both in the US and India. So what do you think are some lessons from the ongoing pandemic about the role of government in innovation in the cases of vaccine?
Yeah. Now, vaccine research is a very good example of a technology where market failures are extremely high. Because according to the WHO, there are something like 279 R&D projects on COVID-19 vaccines going all over the world. Okay. And we have only about 8 vaccines for which some emergency user authorization has been given by national health authorities. Okay. So which means that almost like 270 of that 271 out of that 279 has either failed or has not reached any kind of status. Okay. And to encourage private sector to do this, the state will have to come in a very big way and support that. Okay. And one of the things that I forgot to mention is what is called public technology procurement. Okay, which is a non-financial instrument for promoting innovations. And this public technology procurement is extremely important. For vaccine research, you have to use all kinds of instruments. Okay, and public technology procurement is something which you have to use very, very well. And this is public technology procurement in the case of vaccine is called advanced marketing commitments. Okay, and this is a WHO sanctioned, approved instrument, where governments will buy upfront, even before you have developed the vaccine. Governments will buy that vaccine upfront by giving you, say, for instance, they will buy 1 billion doses of vaccine from you, even before the vaccines have gone through those 3 phases of research, or testing, because as you know, in vaccine, one of the most important things is this 3 phases of testing for testing the safety and efficacy of the vaccine. Okay. So even before that has been done, governments will buy 1 billion doses, by giving you the money upfront. So the money is in your hands, and you can use that for conducting the various trials, etc. Otherwise, you won't do that. Okay. In other words, the main lesson that I would draw is that here is a country where free market is at the heart of everything that they do. Government intervention is a dirty word, okay? But when it comes to vaccine research, the government has stepped in a very big way. And another important thing, which I must say right at the beginning, much more than advanced marketing commitment, is that the US had always promoted basic research in vaccine development. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is that one of the most important lessons which US is showing to rest of the world, including the European Union, is that, heaven's sake, even if you don't like government should play a very important role in supporting basic research, because it will not be done by private sector firms. Okay, small governments can show big failures as far as health research is concerned. So you have to use industrial policy instruments explicitly. US has used it, and UK has used it very limited way, and they have had success. And if you look at all the other 8 vaccines which have been developed and for which emergency user authorization has been given, they have all come from public sector agencies, not from private sector agencies. So if you look at Sinovac and Sinopharm in China, which is one of the largest COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers, although you may have some questions about the safety and efficacy of those vaccines, but they are one of the largest vaccine manufacturers in the world now. Okay, and they are publicly owned. Okay, and if you look at Gamaleya Research Center in Russia, that's also publicly owned. Okay, So if you take any COVID-19 vaccine development, it has, even when private sector firms have developed, they have received massive amounts of support from public research. So that's the main lesson, that there is a clear role for government in knowledge creation, and especially in health-related technologies.
Thank you very much for that answer. And having explored innovation policy and the role of government in enhancing innovation, I would like to continue our conversation maybe on innovation by focusing on potential social and economic risk of the current rapid innovation pace. So to what extent automation, robotization represent a danger, in your opinion, especially for the Indian economy? And what other dangers you foresee from these major innovation and technological changes?
Yeah. Now, as you know, when you use some of the new technologies, they are most of those technologies are labor saving. They use much less labor per unit of output. Okay, and in this current world of countries and companies competing with each other, to become extremely competitive is a mantra they all have to follow. Okay, so there is no escape from becoming much more efficient, internationally speaking. And in that process, they have to use new technologies, which can sometimes lead to reduction in the employment intensities. So if you look at India, for that matter, we are a labor surplus, capital scarce economy. Okay, and we have been relying on labor-intensive manufacturing industries, such as, for instance, cotton textiles, ready-made garments, leather and leather manufacturers, and various kinds of simple manufacturing activity which uses more of labor than capital. Okay, but over time, our labor intensive sectors have already become capital intensive, because they have been substituting machines for men. Okay, so this has been going on. But so you have a hierarchy of technologies when you talk about automation. Okay, and say, for instance, inside a factory, you can use a forklift truck or a conveyor belt to move materials inside the factory. Okay, but even when you do that, the labor displacing effect is not that high. Okay, because the forklift truck will have to be driven by someone. Because soon you will have autonomous forklift trucks operating inside the factories. But as of now, you need to have. But when you have newer kind of automation technologies like the use of robots, multi-purpose industrial robots in manufacturing, okay, that can replace a lot of labor. Okay, and for a labor-abundant economy which has been characterized by reductions in employment, because our Indian economy has been characterized by reductions in employment growth in the last few years. Okay, so when you introduce such technologies which are labor saving, that can bring in a lot of difficulties for the economy in terms of for the first thing that would happen is growing unemployment. Second thing as a result of that would be increase in the income inequality between the top decile and the bottom decile. So you can have the Gini coefficients going up, showing that there is a high degree of income inequality, and research has shown that such high degree of income inequality can have a deleterious effect on future growth, because no countries with such highly unequal distribution of income can continuously grow over a period of time. But fortunately, what has happened is that if you look at the highest form of automation, which is the use of multi-purpose industrial robots, they have been confined by and large to automotive industry. And within the automotive industry, only for two tasks, because when you take any occupation, there are several tasks within that. Okay, so some tasks which are where the occupational hazards are very high, things like, for instance, welding and painting, where large amounts of heat is generated, and the worker is dealing with various kinds of chemicals which can be cancer causing, for instance, So those are the kind of tasks which have been automated. Okay. So as of now, the negative effects of automation is not very high. But having said it, with the development of artificial intelligence, which have been, growing leaps and bounds, you can make. So right now, the kind of stuff that can be handled by, let's say, a robot is those routine standardized activities where not much of cognitive skills are required. But that's where artificial intelligence is now going to make a difference. Robots their intelligence can be increased. The machines can learn, and the machine learning and so on, they can learn from, so that if that's going to take place in the future, then it can be a dangerous thing for employment creation. And you're already seeing that in the service side also. And India is a service sector-oriented economy. And many services now are slowly getting automated. For instance, even in my own institute, okay, many operations, for instance, our libraries come now completely automated. So, earlier our library had for about 100,000 books and about 3,500 journals, we had about 25 people working in the library. Now we have almost like 150,000 books and 4,000 journals. And we have only 5 persons working in the library. So from 20, it has come down to 5, but no reduction in the services which are offered to users. Okay. So in the service sector, also there is a fair amount of automation which is going on, which we have not understood because we really do not have detailed data on these. So I think employment creation in the service sector also will get reduced. And even when new employment is created, the quality of that employment, is under some question.
Thank you for that answer. And yes, so if I understand you well, we are already witnessing some change in terms of in the employment market, some automation, but we expect that pace to be way faster in the near future. And following from that, we're witnessing, and currently and in the past year, a multiplication in India of e-government and digital initiatives. And so to explore a bit that, in what way the Indian government is implementing the use of information technology in the public sector, and how is it changing services and access to the population and and benefits and different risk and benefits of that?
Yeah. Well, as you know, the government of India's policy over a fairly long period of time has been to increase the use of digital technologies for provision of various kinds of services, because at the heart of digital technologies is software, where India has a comparative advantage. The government has been trying to promote the domestic market for software. And one way in which the government can promote domestic market for software is the government itself using a lot of software products, because if you look at the installation base of computers in India, it is largely in public sector organizations. Okay, in government, in universities, in research institutes, and so on. Okay, although the use of the private sector has also increased, but by and large, it is in the government. So if government can provide various kinds of services to the citizens, say for instance, registering your births and deaths, and paying your income tax online and so on, and this can improve efficiency at all levels. So that's been the basic policy of the government. So they have been trying to do this. For the last several years, we have also been trying to promote the use of digital payments, for instance, the government has now said that certain large transactions can, when it exceeds a certain threshold, you can only do it through a digital mode. Okay, you cannot use cash for those purposes. So this has been going on, and we have had some successes in certain areas, and other places, I think. But again, when you talk about governments in India, you have to talk about different hierarchy of governments. You have at the central government, you have because it's a federal country, okay? So you have a central government, then you have various state governments, okay? So the process of digitalization of will vary across the country.
Thank you so much once again. And you've touched a bit on that in your answer about the push for digital payment by the government and different regional governments in India. What are we seeing as the impact of these pushes for digital payments, coupled with, in the past year, a lot of demonetization policy that happened? So what are the impact on maybe the poorest or just generally on the Indian economy of this push?
Yeah, but let me clarify that digital payments started in India from 2011-12 onwards. Okay, demonetization is something which came up in 2016-17, and that was the real purpose of demonetization, as originally said by the government at that time, was to extinguish black money from the economy. Okay, because money was held in the form of large currency notes. Okay, and so if you can demonetize those currency notes, lock, stock, and barrel one fine evening, then those money will become worthless, and those crooks who have been amassing those money will find it difficult to bring it to the banking system, because if you are bringing it to the banking system to get it exchanged for other currencies, you should be capable of explaining where you got that money from. Okay, but what has happened is that 99% of those 99% of those currencies which were demonetized came back into the banking system. Okay, so because Indians always had a feeling that there is a large amount of black money stashed away in the economy, and a lot of this is based on imagination, okay, and not based on real thing. Okay, so with the result that the extent of black money in our economy, I think we all thought it was huge, but it was actually not that high. Okay, it was not that high. So the government quickly changed the narrative from black money curtailing to hastening the process of digital payments. But as I said, digital payments had already started way back in 2011-12, because it was done in a hasty manner in 2016-17. And given the fact that India has a large informal sector, about 90% of the people claims to be working in the informal sector, where cash is the main mode of business. Okay, and so removing cash from the scene seem to have affected people who are working in the informal sector. Okay, but having said it, now slowly over time, the usage of digital payments have been increasing. Okay, and so we have a wide variety of digital payments which have come up now, and so you can pretty much pay everything with, for instance, your mobile phone, and you have Google Pay and various kinds of other payments. But for that, people need to have first an income, okay, and second, a bank account. Okay, so a person who is working in the informal sector with a regular form of income and not having a bank account, how do you expect that person to benefit from the advantages of digital payments? Because the primary conditions, the necessary conditions for digital payments to exist is having a regular source of income, having a bank account. Then comes the digital payment infrastructure. Okay, the digital payment infrastructure has certainly improved over the last several years, especially after the 2016-17 demonetization. It has certainly improved. Broadband is, you need to be connected to the internet, so that has improved. We are now close to 800 million broadband subscribers in the country. Okay, and ownership of smartphones is also been improving. we are close to almost like 800 million, because almost entire broadband is accessed through smartphones, not through a computer. Okay, they are through mobile internet. Okay, so we have close to about 800 million smartphones, within the economy. So, and point of sale machines have increased, and wide variety of various kinds of payments have been done, and then you have a unified payment interface. So there has been a fair amount of technological improvements in the infrastructure for digital payments. But for digital payments to succeed, you need to have a regular income and need to have a bank account. Now, government has come into the bank account part of it, which is the Prime Minister's, it is called the Jan Dhan accounts, PMJDY accounts, where you can have a zero balance account. Okay, but unless you have regular forms of income, you cannot. So that's where I think we need to apply our attention to. Okay, so that's a downside of the digital payments story. Okay, the plus side of it is the income tax payments, compliance, etc., has increased. And so that has been so tax evasion has been to a great extent reduced. And along with digital payments, we have also another important measure which was introduced in 2017, which is the goods and services tax, the GST, which is a one nation, one tax. Okay, and that also requires a very large digital, infrastructure. Okay. So the digital payments and the introduction of the goods and services tax are two ways in which the government was seeking to formalize the economy. Okay, so that all transactions are recorded and so on. Okay, but for this policy to succeed, you need to have a regular employment and regular form of income. So that I think that's where the government has now to concentrate on.
Thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of our conversation. And Professor Sunil Mani, I want to thank you once again for your time and for all your enlightening answers. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for having me.